Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. May Brahman protect us both, the teacher and the taught. May he nourish us both. May we both work together with great energy. May our studies be vigorous and fruitful. May we not hate or criticize each other. Om. Peace, peace, peace. We continue the study of the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. Last time we did the sutras 2 and 3 of third chapter. We will continue with this sutra 3, which is dealing with samadhi. Samadhi is the last stage in the 8 limbs. We start with yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. Samadhi is the last one. From dharana onwards, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi, we are working with the mind. In dharana, we try to concentrate the mind. The mind concentrates for a very short time, then get distracted. Distractions come, other thoughts come, and the mind moves away. Again, we keep bringing the mind back on the object. When we are able to continue keeping the mind on the object of meditation for longer time, or object of concentration for longer time, then it is dhyana. So dhyana is described as like the unbroken flow of oil poured from one vessel to another. There is no break. It flows continuously. The mind is absorbed in one object. And whatever modifications happen in the mind stuff, they are all related, connected with that one object or idea. And when dhyana continues and gets deeper, it leads to samadhi. Samadhi is sam adhi. Sam means equal, adhi the highest. Samadhi is the highest level. So the third sutra says, Tadevarthamatra nirbhasam swarupi shunyamiva samadhi. Next one. Robert. Next one. When that giving up all forms reflects only the meaning, it is samadhi, culmination, one with the highest. In samadhi, there is no modification of the mind at all. The mind is absolutely filled with the meaning, the truth of the object of meditation. The object completely pervades our awareness. There is no name, shape, or form of the object. Only the meaning, what it really is, the truth remains. In dhyana, there is the idea, I meditate. But in samadhi, that I totally vanishes. There is no more any distinction between the person meditating and the object of meditation. They get united. The I gets dissolved, and time and space vanishes for the time being. Only the object remains. We become one with that, and we gain supreme knowledge. So the Upanishad says, Brahmavid Brahmaiva Bhavati. The knower of Brahman becomes Brahman. Not staying separate. Just as we said last time, the salt doll becomes one with the ocean. There, the I is no longer present. This superconscious state is devoid of ego, I. In the last class, we mentioned about the three levels of consciousness that Swami Vivekananda speaks about: the unconscious, the conscious, and the superconscious. In the unconscious level, as when we go to sleep, there is no idea of I. I is lost there. Only when we wake up from the sleep, we say, I had a good sleep. But in the deep sleep, there is no I. Again, the superconscious state level also, there is no I. And this superconscious level, devoid of I, Buddha speaks of as the state of nirvana. This state of deep absorption, we may occasionally see the case of some great poets or painters, composers, scientists, where the person gets completely absorbed in the act that he or she temporarily loses sense of time, the whereabouts, and even one's own identity. In modern psychology, it is termed as the flow, a highly concentrated state of mind where the person is completely absorbed in the activity. And this state gives great joy and satisfaction also. But we should not confuse this absorption of the poet or a painter or scientist with samadhi, because the object of concentration is a mundane object. It's not a sacred or holy one. It becomes samadhi only when the object of concentration is spiritual object. We can say it is an equivalent to samadhi state. And this state of samadhi completely transforms a person's life. One effect of that samadhi is the sense of complete freedom. We are no longer bound by fetters, intellectual, mental, physical, or moral. All doubts and ignorance are removed forever. So the Upanishad says, all of ignorance in the heart are loosened. All doubts cease to exist. All the effects of past deeds become exhausted when one attains supreme illumination. We become completely free. We feel the sense of freedom. At present, we are not free. We are actually bound by the senses. We are slaves to the senses. But at that time, when we experience samadhi, everything loosens. We become completely free. All the ignorance are gone. Ignorance is gone, and we feel the freedom. And when a person returns to normal consciousness from the state of samadhi, they bring back a pure joy and bliss, along with transcendental knowledge and a sense of freedom. So that person will be full of bliss. We can see that in the life of Sri Ramakrishna, almost many times a day, he went into samadhi. And in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, we see this the description as a mart of joy, master and the devotees, loud laughter, some of the devotees, young devotees rolling on the ground in laughter. There is always joy. And Holy Mother once said that I never saw him with a sad countenance. Always bliss, overflowing with bliss, because he has touched the source of all bliss in samadhi. Other than this sense of bliss, there are no external marks to indicate the experience of samadhi, because it is not a physical thing. It's purely related to consciousness. If you are looking for some physical marks to recognize a person who has experienced samadhi, we miss the whole point. Because coming down from the state of samadhi, they continue to lead the life as before, but with a completely different outlook. They are seeing the presence of divine in everything, everywhere. When Narendra uh, experienced samadhi, then for the first time, he told Sri Ramakrishna that he wanted to remain immersed in samadhi. Sri Ramakrishna rebuked him, saying that you are a very small-minded man. Is there's a stage higher than that? When you come down from samadhi and look around, you see only that divine everywhere. That's even a stage higher than samadhi says. So when they come down from the state of samadhi, they see the same, they do everything as they used to do before, but seeing the divine everywhere and in everybody. So it's very hard for ordinary people to recognize them because they behave in the same way as before. So ordinary people may think they are mad or half cracked, just as the people in the Dakshineshwar village and the temple officials thought about Sri Ramakrishna. They used to refer to him as the mad priest. Patanjali describes the two types of samadhi. Samprajñāta samadhi, the lower, and asamprajñāta samadhi, the higher stage. We have dealt that in the first chapter, sutras 42 to 51. But here we'll just go through quickly. This Samprajñāta Samadhi and Asamprajñāta Samadhi, they're also known as, in Vedanta, we call them as Savikalpa and Nirvikalpa Samadhi, or Sabija and Nirbija Samadhi. Samprajñāta Samadhi, again, is of various kinds depending on the object of concentration. So we start with Savitarka Samadhi. That's the lowest one among the Samprajñāta Samadhi. Savitarka Samadhi, Samadhi with question, when the mind is concentrated on a gross object. Then comes Nirvitarka Samadhi, Samadhi without question. The object of concentration is gross, but without sound, quality, and the resulting knowledge. That means without name and form. The third one is Savichara Samadhi, Samadhi with discrimination, when the object of concentration is the fine elements, tanmatras, sound, touch, color, taste, and smell. And they are thought of as existing in time and space. Still higher comes Nirvijara Samadhi, Samadhi without discrimination, when the mind is concentrated on the fine elements, tanmatras, without the awareness of time and space. Then comes Sananda Samadhi, the blissful Samadhi. The mind concentrates on itself. The mind concentrates on the mind free from qualities of rajas, that is activity, and tamas, dullness. And the highest among the Samprajñāta Samadhi is Asmita Samadhi, when the mind is only aware of ego, free from rajas and tamas. In this state, the meditator is able to think of oneself without the body, without the gross body. So often they are called as videhis, those we are without the consciousness of the body. In the Puranas, in the epics, we speak of, in the Ramayana, we speak of Sita's father, King Janaka, as Videha. He had no body consciousness, they say. In all these, the I consciousness persists, and the impressions remain. The impressions are the cause for the future birth. So they are called the seeds. And so these samadhis, or samprajnana samadhi, they are called as sabija samadhis, samadhi with seeds. Whereas asamprajnana samadhi, the impressions are lost, the eye is completely, eye consciousness is removed, the mind is absolutely free from any thought. The eye also disappears. Swami Vivekananda explains that when one practices this higher concentration, all old tendencies of rajas and tamas, that is restlessness and dullness, are lost. Again, the tendencies of sattva, goodness, they are also destroyed. Not just the evil ones, good ones also destroyed. We go beyond the gunas. The soul is left alone in its own splendor. And because these tendencies which are the cause of future births are all destroyed, the person is not going to have any more birth. And so this samadhi is also known as nirbija samadhi, samadhi without seeds. Now, Patanjali explains how to practice these three stages together. So the fourth sutra says, Trayam ekatra samyamaha. These three, when practiced together with regard to one object, is samyama. These three means dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. They are practiced together in regard to one object, that is samyama. Samyama is a technical term used in the yoga. There's two terms of two parts, sam and yama. Sam means total or perfect. Yama, control or discipline. So samyama means perfect self-control or perfect self-discipline. In samyama, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi are practiced together with regard to one particular object. It's a continuous process. In dharana, just to remind ourselves once more, in dharana, we fix the mind on a particular object or in a limited area, object or idea. But there can be breaks in that concentration. Dhyana is getting deep into that, becoming saturated with it, and making sure that only one thought or object remains without any interruption. Whatever changes comes in the mind stuff, it is connected with that particular object or thought. It's not straying away from that limited area. In samadhi, the I is gone. Only the object, the truth, occupies the whole field of awareness. So these three are not three separate disciplines, but different phases of the same mental process. Each stage going deeper and deeper in concentration and getting more and more, getting free from any distractions. And Samyama helps in any field. In any work, we need one-pointedness, steadiness, and perseverance to achieve excellence. So Samyama can be applied in any field to gain the highest result. Talking about Samyama, Professor Archie J. Baum, in his book Yoga, Union with the Ultimate Rights. Samyama is composed of two words, sam and yama. Yama connotes the way of nature or the nature of anything that tends to continue or is disposed to persist. So, Samyama has an enduring quality about it, which is experienced as a duration. Some connotes unity, one, sameness, identity, oneness. It is a continuing process. Such unity is not mere unity, not abstract unity, but concrete unity, unity of different things, of concentration, meditation, and realization. So these three together, continued, is Samyama. Continued with regard to one particular object is Samyama. Now, what happens if we continue with this with this discipline of Samyama? That Patanjali says in the next sutra, Tajjayat prajna alokaha. By the conquest of that comes the light of knowledge, pure consciousness. That is, the mastery of Samyama leads to knowledge of all kinds. And we have to remember, knowledge is power. So when we get all knowledge, we get all power also. Prajna is the consciousness that is present in all of us, which makes us feel that we are alive. It is the supreme light behind every one of us. It is that light which helps me to see, hear, speak, think, act. And when that consciousness is gone, that light of consciousness is gone, I am dead. So when we master Samyama, we reach the realm of pure consciousness. And it is not just awareness, this or consciousness is with love. So it is loving consciousness. Those who reach that stage is full of love. When we continue with it, Dharana, Dhyana and Samadhi, Patanjali says we get Prajna Aloka, the light of pure consciousness, which is our real nature. In Vedanta, what we call Chidananda Rupa, Chit Ananda, consciousness and bliss. That's why it's called loving consciousness. And a pure mind, free from attachment and aversion, likes and dislikes, has the ability to reveal that light of consciousness. There are no more obstacles to knowledge. Ordinarily, our intelligence moves from one object to another, fleeting, making it impossible to penetrate fully into any one thing. But in Samyama, it completely concentrates on one object, one idea, and the knower comes closer and closer to the object, or closer and closer to the known, and finally gets merged in that. So, because there are no more obstacles to knowledge, one can know whatever one wants to know. And that is how the sages realize these spiritual truths. They tap the ground of all knowledge. Even in our external world, we can see the modern scientists discovered many truths about the external world with their mind in that state of deep absorption, a state like samadhi. They were where they were able to realize or find out hidden truths of external world. Now Patanjali gives us a warning. Tasya bhumishu vinyogaha. Next one. That should be employed in stages. That is, don't think that we can just jump, avoid a few steps and go straight up. So Patanjali is saying, asking us to be careful. One has to go slowly. Gaining knowledge, the mind can rise from lower stage to higher stage, but it has to happen gradually. If we try to apply the mind all of a sudden to subtle objects without earlier preparation, we won't be able to gain much knowledge of that object. So suppose we are going straight away to Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, because I want to reach the stage of Samadhi without going to the earlier stages. We can't reach there. It's a slow process. We have to go through, make the preparation for that. If it's just like human development. Spiritual development also is a slow process like human development. Look at the animals and human beings. Animal, the baby is born. Within a few hours or days of birth, the animal can move around. As a human being, it takes months and years to move around and gain maturity. The same with spiritual evolution. We are trying to gain mastery over our minds. We have to tackle and struggle with our mind from various angles and aspects. We evolve spiritually by slowly getting control over ourselves. As we struggle with our mind, we study it, then we come to realize or understand what are the limitations of our mind. Then we can, only when you understand the limitations, can we try to overcome them, sublimate the shortcomings, and in that process, purify our mind. So there is no shortcut. There is no shortcut to spiritual realization. There is no instant illumination. That's what we have to remember always. It's hard work. One cannot jump the steps. The earlier stages of Yama and Niyama, what Patanjali gives here, help to purify our mind and prepare it for concentration on the self. They are the real foundation. The foundation has to be firm and solid and secure. If the foundation is not firm, the building will collapse. So if the foundation of our spiritual life is not strong, spiritual life will collapse. It will lead to disaster. Often people are impatient. They straight away want to attain the state of samadhi. So don't have the patience to go through the early stages. Oh, yama and niyama, that's ethical and moral values. They don't want to go through that. They want straight to go to, say, pranayama, because you do pranayama, read that, we get results immediately. You can see that. So go for pranayama and then dharana, dhyana, samadhi. It's not so easy. If you don't know how to handle the concentrated mind, how to sublimate our desires and feelings, then the concentrated mind will run after sense objects, sense pleasures, and worldly objects with greater intensity because the mind is concentrated. At present, the mind is scattered, so it goes to worldly objects and also spiritual matters. But when the mind is concentrated, and if it is not channelized properly, which comes only through practice of yama and niyama, then that concentrated mind will go after worldly pleasures with greater intensity, and which will be a disaster for the spiritual seeker. That is why we are asked to go step by step. Swami Yatisharanda gives this warning. Without attaining a certain amount of sublimation and purification of the feelings and desires, concentrations become very dangerous in the case of persons who have not prepared themselves properly for the higher life. So, a certain amount of purity is very, very important before we try for concentration, that is dharana. That is why they say, Patanjali is asking us to go step by step. Even in meditation, we have to go step by step. The object of concentration are infinite. They are both gross objects and fine and finer objects. So we start with gross objects and slowly go to finer and finer objects as objects of meditation. So we start with gross objects, personal form of God. People tend to say that, oh, they don't believe in personal form of God. That's all idolatry. We think of the formless aspect of Brahman. But that's only just with words. We cannot straight away go to formless aspect. You have to go through these forms to formless. From the gross to finer, fine, finer, and then without any objects. That's it. It has to go slowly, step by step. So Swami Vivekananda says, when by the previous preparations, it becomes strong and controlled and has the power of fine perception, the mind should be employed in meditation. This meditation must begin with gross objects and slowly rise to finer and finer until it becomes objectless. So, Patanjali and Swami Vivekananda are giving us the warning, don't try to jump over steps, thinking that immediately you'll reach the highest goal. Even by the grace of some holy personality, you reach that high, experience that high state. You won't be able to remain there for long if you don't have the preparation. Even those who have reached, gained the blessings of holy people have to struggle hard to make that spiritual realizations their own, to get established in that high state of spirituality. One example we can say is Swami Brahmananda, considered or thought of as the spiritual son of Sri Ramakrishna. He was the dynamo of spirituality. Swami Vivekananda says he is much greater than me in spirituality. He was practicing severe austerities in Vrindavan after Sri Ramakrishna's passing away. They were all going around as wandering monks and in different places of pilgrimage. Each one was doing spiritual practices. And Swami Brahmananda was in Vrindavan. At that time, another holy person, Vijay Krishna Goswami, who was a leader of the Brahma Samaj and who had been in close contact with Sri Ramakrishna, was also in Vrindavan. And seeing Swami Brahmananda spending hours in severe spiritual practices, austerities, one day Vijay Krishna Goswami asked him, Sri Ramakrishna gave you everything, all the realization. Why do you have to go through so much of austerities? The same question was asked by one of his brother disciples who was living with him to look after him. Why do you have to sit like an ordinary person seeking his blessing, doing all these spiritual practices so much? You have already got everything. Sri Ramakrishna even gave you a state of samadhi. Swami Brahmananda said, yes, it is true. The Master has given us everything. But I have to do this. I have to follow these disciplines and make them my own. He has given it. But I have to follow spiritual disciplines and practices so that I can hold on to that high state. Otherwise, you won't be able to hold on to that high state, remain in that high state of consciousness. And then we come to the next sutra. Trayam andarangaha purvebhyaha. These three are more internal than those that precede. These three means the three states of Dharana, Dhyana, and Samadhi. The previous one. The other one. The last three, Dharana, Dhyana, and Samadhi, they are more internal than the rest that precede. That's the first 5 steps. Of the 8 limbs of the yoga, the first 5 are only preparations. That is yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, and pratyahara. Yama and niyama gives us moral and ethical foundation. Our mental distractions are removed. Asana gives us control over the body. We are able to sit for long time. Body is our under control. The body has to be kept fit and under control, because body is the only tool that we have for spiritual practices. Often people have got the wrong idea that once you get into spiritual path, or if you're following a spiritual life, you should ignore the body and subject the body to severe austerities. That is, Sri Krishna says you are torturing the body. Real austerity is controlling the mind. But ordinary people have got this wrong idea that body should be tortured. Now, body should be kept fit. In Sanskrit, there's a saying, Sarira Madhyam Ghalu Dharma Sadhanam. The body is the only tool that we have for spiritual practices. So, asana is practiced to keep the body fit, and so we can ignore the body. When the body is fit, we can ignore the body and concentrate on controlling the mind. Otherwise, the body will be calling for attention all the time. So that's the purpose of asana. Then comes pranayama, controlling the breath, and pratyahara. Pratyahara is trying to hold the mind back from external impulses. Patanjali says all these are external. The other 3, Dharana, Dhyana, and Samadhi, are internal. So the real practice of trying to restrain the modifications of the mind stuff, modifications of the mind stuff, that is what in the first sutra we called as Chitta Vritti Nirodha, restraining the modifications of the mind stuff. That starts with Dharana, Dhyana, and Samadhi. That's all, everything is internal practices. So Patanjali says they are internal, because it's within the controlling and trying to deal with the mind. The struggle is all within. The internal parts, we are turning the mind inside. So we have to be always alert and watchful about the content of the mind, what we are thinking, how we are responding to others. We have no control over how people outside or other people do things, but we can control how we respond to those impulses from that comes from outside. And so we have to be watchful and alert about the content of our mind. Nobody can do that for us. People can, our teachers can give us guidance. They can tell us what to do, what not to do, how to control the mind. But The actual act of trying, looking at our mind and deciding how to react to the or respond to the different impulses that come from outside, or how to sublimate the impulse, the desires and feelings, we have to do, because nobody else know what is in our mind. Nobody can help us in there. Only we know what our mind is, that what we are thinking, where we have placed our mind. We may be sitting for meditation and thinking of something. Now with this lockdown, oh, we had to go and do the shopping before the crowd comes. But suppose we are sitting for meditation. But sitting there, we do all sorts of things. Who knows that? For the other people who see, we are sitting for meditation, but only we know what our mind is thinking. So that's why he says it's internal. We have to be careful, watchful, and help ourselves, raise ourselves. As the Bhagavad Gita says, Uddharad Atmanatmanam. We have to raise our own self with ourselves. In the following sutras, Patanjali describes what happens when we continue with the Samyama. We go on with the three process of concentration, meditation, and samadhi. What happens further, he is going to describe in the following sutras.
Just ask questions.
Is there any questions or discussion?
Don't forget to unmute yourself if you need to ask a question. Maybe not. It's very tough. All right. Yes, very, very tough, subtle areas we've been dealing with in this talk. Just some announcements about what's coming up. This coming Friday night, we have the fortnightly Bhagavad Gita discussion. And nice link to today's talk, we will be entering the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, the yoga of meditation, and in particular, the first 2 verses. We'll be discussing about those. So that's this Friday night from 7:30 p.m. via Zoom. Next Sunday, we have a special event that is the annual Guru Purnima celebration, where we honor our teachers, both spiritual and secular. And Gayatriprana will be giving a talk, and then I will present a PowerPoint presentation. For many of you who knew revered Pravrajika Gayatriprana Mataji, who was here for 29 and a half years, starting our center here, we'll show some photos and video footage of those final years of her life that she spent in India after returning to India from Sydney in 2011. And in addition, I'll share some photos and videos of my visit to California early last year to the Vedanta centers there, or many of them. Just as COVID-19 was starting to close in on us, I managed to sneak in there and out before everything started closing down. So that I'm sure you'll find interesting. Plus a little bit of footage from England, the center there, and a place associated with Swami Vivekananda's time in London. So that'll be next Sunday from 11 a.m. right through till up to about 12:30 or so. So I hope you can join us for that. In the meantime, for everybody in Sydney, stay safe, be positive, be creative, and we hope you're all getting vaccinated. Our only way back to some sort of normal life. Thanks for joining us this morning.